Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, and thanks for listening, whether it's on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. Lots of headlines to get to, but I have a guest standing by to discuss a segment that she shared with me that she saw on CNN from Friday, and I saw it as well here just now recently on YouTube. Economy warning sign. The number of unemployed black women grows. Now, we've seen unemployment numbers actually jostling about going back now to 2024, and notably, the number of African-American women that are signing up for unemployment is something of an alarming trend. Victor Blackwell of CNN had this discussion on his panel last Friday with Black Voters Matter Fund co-founder Latasha Brown, former Republican Georgia Senate candidate Stephanie Donegan, and Capital B national editor Dalila Paul. Let's dive into that conversation real quick, and then I'll bring on my guests.
The president promised the golden era for America. Where is it?
I mean, ultimately, we have to just be honest and say it doesn't look good, which I know people don't expect me to say, but the reality is right now, because of all the cutbacks in the federal government, it is going to hit black women disproportionately right now because of how much we are employed. That being said, I do believe that it is going to bounce back with the new businesses and new jobs that will be coming, but I think we need to give it time. I don't think we've given it enough time.
That's something we heard from the Commerce Secretary as well. Let's play what Howard Lutnick said.
We've seen that in all sorts of agencies throughout this government. The people, the holdovers from the Biden administration, they're just bent against the president's success. They're rooting against America and against Donald Trump, and that's got to end. So he can't replace somebody, 2 weeks ago, and you expect fundamental change.
Latasha, he says, give it time.
The challenge with this is that when you look at black women, we, particularly in terms of women, we are, in terms of participation in the labor market, we're 60% more than all of our women counterparts of the labor market. But what's interesting in federal jobs, we're about 11.7%, which means that's in parity of our population, right? But when you look in the private sector, we're less than 1.8% when you look at higher management jobs. So what we have seen is that federal jobs have actually created a pathway, an opportunity that black women, it demonstrates that when black women are given an opportunity, that there are federal protections that allow us to matriculate, that what you see is that we're able to get representation. What he's saying around that we're supposed to just play on the market, but what we're seeing is an underrepresentation in the market, that oftentimes we're underpaid in the market, we're in entry-level jobs, you do not see the same kind of economic stability that we've seen with federal employment.
I saw your facial expression.
Because ultimately, a lot of the hiring, I feel, that's happened within the federal government was to check boxes for DEI, not necessarily because this was just perfect for them. And I only say that because of how many black women have been employed. And I think that's part of the reason is we're seeing the layoffs that we're seeing and the unemployment, because that's how they got hired in the first place.
I think the interesting thing about that is that in terms of federal jobs, that is merit-based, that people actually are able to keep their jobs or even to literally ascend based on being merit-based. You don't see that in the private sector. So I think it's really to say that black women working in these jobs is to check a box. It ignores the fact that is a merit base.
Well, to a degree, because I do know for federal government, depending on what your history is, if you have worked in the military, if you're black, you do get extra points when it comes to hiring. And so being black in general will push people up when it comes to hiring. Being a black woman will push people up when it comes to hiring.
Yeah, can I pause? I think we have to think about the impact. I mean, the fact that you have hundreds, thousands of black women who are out of jobs. Women from the age of 40-something, 50-something who are caregivers for their families. We've had reports. We have interviewed women who are struggling right now. So I hear what you're saying about the checking of the boxes, but I think we're losing sight of the human impact of this.
Actually, I agree with you on that. I actually feel that it's quite unfortunate that that has to happen, but we cannot continue to keep people in jobs to keep a payroll going. I think that's unfortunate.
But that's not, again, I have to disagree with you. I think a lot of the women who have been losing their jobs have played critical roles in government.
But if it was
and it's
really
beyond
critical,
DEI.
if it was
it's
really
beyond
critical,
DEI.
they would still have their job. It wasn't that critical.
No, they don't have their
disagree.
jobs because now there's a policy in place that really has been racialized. It's not. We're looking at a space that how were they able to ascend? It wasn't about the checking of box. It was hard work. It was. We know that in a culture as in America, when have black women ever been given something just because we're checking a box? The women, we are the cornerstone of this economy all across it.
Well, I hear you, but I can also say that one of my first jobs was for the federal government, and I was very clear that I got pushed up ahead of people because I was black and I could check the box.
Well, let me ask you this, because there's a gender economist, Katika Roy, who calculated between February and July that 319,000 black women lost their jobs in the private and public sector. In that same period, job increases for white men was 365,000. There were 176,000 job gains for Hispanic women. There were 142,000 job gains for white women. And so when you suggest that these black women were in jobs to check a box, reconcile that with the increases for these other demographics and communities.
Well,
those jobs were earned and they deserved better jobs and deserved to have more jobs, while the hundreds of thousands of black women were just there to be pushed along and check a box.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying, because
Okay.
ultimately I think we all can agree that DEI has not just helped black women. So that's in the first place. DEI has helped minorities, women, white women. DEI has helped not just black women, but when it comes to the conversation of federal workers, with us being such a large percentage of federal workers.
It's deeply insulting to say that. It's deeply insulting that when you're looking at federal workers, we make 11.7%. That's just in parity of our population, and so that there you have 80%. Of more of people that represent different segments of society. So to suggest that black women in some way that our presence in the federal government has come from just somehow we are checking the box really undermines the fact that we have been the cornerstone of the labor market in this country.
No, it doesn't. It just looks, that's the way you want to see it. It doesn't. Ultimately, black women were not the only people who were laid off. It's just that the conversation we're having today is around the large percentage of black women, and that is because of how many black women are employed federally.
Joining me is Shavonda Miles, who is the CEO of Vonda Monet LLC, political consultant. Shavonda, thank you, by the way, first of all, for sharing that segment from CNN, because I didn't get to catch it. Believe it or not, I don't get to catch everything that airs on Political Talk on CNN or MSN or Fox News or Newsmax or OAN. There's so much to cover, but this was an important conversation. And I found the panel pretty interesting in that CNN managed to find 3 African-American women who came from divergent standpoints, including even a Republican. But what was really disheartening for me, and I'm not a black woman, I found it disheartening that Stephanie Donegan walked into a lot of tropes that were dismaying. The discussion that they were having about black women being disproportionately affected in unemployment numbers now, mostly, I guess, in large part due to DOGE and staffing cuts at the federal and sometimes state governments, I think speaks to a larger conversation about the growing disdain that Americans have had for the word government for decades. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Thank you so much for that introduction and talking about that segment for Victor Blackwell's show. First of all, yes, government, for people who may not be able to maybe study civics on a regular basis, it can sound intimidating to some people to some degree. When I was at CNN, I spoke to a large proportion of people who were not familiar with the 3 branches of government. So that can be intimidating. And you're right, the more that we speak about it, the more that it's a part of our daily life, I think it is turning off a lot of voters, unfortunately, due to some parts of media that has responsibility of that as well, and just lack of knowledge. We just went through an election in 2024 where there were over 70 million people that did not vote. So something did not resonate with people or move them to go out of their house and to practice their civic duty. So yes, you are correct. I think it is the responsibility of us in media or politicians or consultants to make sure that we explain it is not a scary word, but the more you know about it, it can empower you.
Talk to me a little bit about the representation of African American women in government and the rising number of unemployed. There just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest, I don't think, in that plight outside of the households that African American women and those who rely on their income are feeling. I just feel like this is an undertold story, and seeing CNN cover this was fantastic, but obviously, there seems to be at least a tiny blip on the radar that we see anyway, that we're starting to hear people discuss unemployment in African American households. But women, it's even more exacerbated.
Yes, and then thank you for saying that. First, I think it's a start to have that panel for three Black women on the panel to be able to articulate from their experiences. For me personally, I have friends who unfortunately were laid off from the federal government. Department of Education, Department of Affairs, Department of Veteran Affairs, CDC. I unfortunately know Black women that have lost their jobs. People who've been there over 15 years. It is not easy for particularly a woman of color, Black, whatever you would like to call our demographic, to find employment easy, and you have a degree and you've been doing this because of Doge. This started in January. We're not even a year in, and we have people that are out of the workforce. You already seen the statistics for August 2025. Only 22,000 job growth for the country. There are things that are ever present right now in front of us that we are literally watching the desecration of our economy and literally going into a silent recession, or you want to call it that. So I think it affects women. It affects you mentally. I can say that for someone who's been through that. Mentally, you have to find a support system. You have to make immediate changes to your household. And that thought, it can bother you, anxiety, health problems, all those things can exacerbate if you don't pay attention to it, which is why having that panel is a start. It did bother me, some of the comments of one of the panelists, but I also understand she's coming from a view, and that is her viewpoint. We just need to have that continuous conversation. And thanks to those bloggers, people like you that is bringing attention to it. This is the start, and we keep putting that message. And as long as we keep sharing, maybe we can get more women to speak about their personal experiences.
Well,
that's my hope.
What bothered me was when Stephanie kept mentioning the fact that these women were let go from their jobs. They obviously weren't necessary. Well, we don't know that. We don't know that they weren't necessary. In fact, I mean, how many of us? I mean, let's just take a trope here, a stereotype. Going to the DMV is a beating. Nobody enjoys it, right? We hate to show up and we see 15 windows and only 4 are open. But we seem to be mad about the 4 windows that are open and the people working behind those windows instead of the fact that the 11 other windows aren't staffed in the first place. That is part of the problem. That is, to me, a large part of the inefficiency of government. The continuing trend, the circular motion of the GOP mantra that, government is inefficient, has to be cut. Well, cuts make it less efficient. And so then they come back and say, well, see, we told you government's inefficient. We've got to cut it more until you don't have that agency at all. And to me, that's a huge problem, something that Democrats have really kind of failed to come up with the messaging to combat correctly. But again, those that are suffering the most are the people that have the jobs or had the jobs in this case, and those of us who need those jobs to be filled and those agencies to be running efficiently.
And it's interesting you say that because, like you said, it's reflecting in the job report.
Yeah.
So instead of having a laid out plan in stages, it was just abruptly happening at the beginning of this year. And now we're through the summer. For you to have our country to only have 22,000 for job growth, that is very scary. And we hadn't even gotten to the fall, the business fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Where are these people supposed to go? What happens for Christmas time when people go shopping, or Thanksgiving, or Thanksgiving, going out of town to go visit relatives.
Well, and now
buying gifts.
We know
it's a domino effect.
We know the tariffs are going to have an impact on the cost of presents, because Donald Trump already told us maybe your kid only needs $2 instead of 13 or whatever it was he used numbers wise. I got this overarching message from Stephanie Donegan that she felt like African American women who had government jobs were just given them because they checked a box versus having earned them.
So that bothered me, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand. Sometimes I have to remember from my media mindset, If you say things like that, it gets your ratings, it gets your shock value, and those kind of quirky points. That is, I'm hoping, what she was doing. I can't see where is the data that makes sense. That doesn't even make sense.
Again, especially when you consider that African American,
we have no DEI policies no more.
Exactly.
So
well,
how?
And African American women lead when it comes to being educated as far as a target demographic in this country. So that to me would be like, okay, that's who we want in positions of government, right?
Which is why I think she just said that for attention. I mean, where's the data that behind that? You just said it. We all can go. You can go to the universities. You can look at all that's public knowledge of the enrollment numbers and graduation rates. So that doesn't make sense what she said to me. And getting in the federal government is not an easy process. It is rounds of interviews.
We're on with CEO of Vonda Monet LLC, local consultant Shavonda Miles. We'll talk a little bit more about this. The rising and alarming number of unemployed African-American women in the workplace, as we're starting to see some changing about in the unemployment numbers, not just from earlier this year, but also 2024, which means that the recession that we have been opining about coming may actually already be here. Did you know that you were already in a recession? Anyway, it's The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. You can follow The Ron Show, by the way, wherever you podcast. Also at Ron Show ATL on Facebook, Twitter X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Substack, and RonShowATL.com for all the show notes. We are on with Shavonda Miles, who is the CEO of Vonda Monet Political Consultancy. We're talking about the alarming rise in African-American female unemployment. Add to that the fact that you have student loan forgiveness now being undone from the Biden administration, pivoting to the Trump administration. And African-American women are feeling it in the pocketbook more than anyone else in this country, it would seem.
They're also the backbone of the Democratic Party. There are a lot of women, Black women voters who did in the last election. We have the statistics in the numbers. So if they're feeling hurt, where does that lead for candidates? How do we make them feel you should trust in me or persuasion? When you see these numbers on television, you see that there's a domino effect of making sure we need the truth. How do we tell the truth and get their stories out there to make sure that they have the resources once they go through separation notice? It is a really big process and it's not easy. And I hope that we can continue to have more broadcasts or panelists to continue that conversation for Black women. Over 300,000 women that's lost their job, particularly some of the agencies like Department of Education. And again, I know women that works in the federal government. Some of them already gone. Some of them have to wrap up at the end of this month. It's not an easy situation before the end of the year.
Yeah, and I feel like Democrats, maybe not the party as a mechanism, but Democratic voters are in this rock and a hard place scenario where we just had an African-American woman at the top of the ticket. We've had an African-American woman at the top of the ticket at the state level here in Georgia. We had a woman at the top of the ticket in 2016. And in each case, Democrats lost. And there just seems to be a general sense of apprehension in rallying behind a woman or even a woman of color in an electoral sense. And at the same time, we've had this general sense from, and I just see it in social media, so I'm only speaking anecdotally here, since the end of the election, where, the hashtag not my problem has sort of surfaced as well. So we're at a bit of a crossroads where Democrats, liberals, progressives, moderates, even anybody left of center, have to sort of, shake off whatever they have been feeling and put on their big boy pants, their big girl panties, and just get back to coalescing and realizing that the strategy that the other side has had to divide and conquer is actually working, and we have to resist that and recognize it when they're trying it.
I absolutely agree with you on that strategy right now. We have to go with the people who have voted. We have to go with the results. We have to go with that, and we're going to have to coalesce together. We have a trifecta of a party that is focused on doing what they want to do. It is not the way that the Constitution was written. We have to make sure, again, to educate, whether it's through civics, whether it's through community service or volunteering, the church, nonprofit organizations. We have to be able to coalesce those different demographics together. And that comes in with strategy from Democratic strategists and just doing what we're doing now, having the panelists, going into the communities, going to your community HOA groups and places where people go, where they go shopping, movies, your local festivals. Go into the community. They may not know. We can't assume everyone's educated to do that. That is something that our party failed. We can't assume that everybody goes to college. There are people that go to technical school just as bright as anyone else. but we have to make sure that everyone feels accepted and there is a messaging that fits that core demographic of those people that did not vote. Why did they not get there? And how do we go to their communities to make sure they're not left behind?
Another area of concern that disproportionately affects black women and the households that they represent, student loan forgiveness.
Yes.
I mean, it just seems like African-American women are just taking it from several different directions, and it's so unfortunate.
I have a lot of friends who have student loan debt because a lot of people did not get their student loan debt cleared out under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
There are people, that is a whole nother bill.
Mm-hmm.
On top of our rising finances, inflation, with tariffs, like you said, I'm sure you've noticed gas has went up. I see it every morning. I drop my son off at school. People are drowning in debt. There are college students who just graduated, Gen Z. I don't want to call them children. That's disrespectful. Gen Z, Gen Z, former college students, young professionals. I feel for them because it's not fair for them to come out with debt and the jobs aren't there to reflect the salaries and the cost of living. It is just unfair for them.
I want to thank you for reaching out and again sharing that clip with me so that I could share that with my audience as well. Shavonda Miles, CEO of Vonda Monet LLC, consultant here in Metro Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining the Ron Show today and having this conversation with me. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Y'all, I have been like jumping out of my skin since yesterday when I finally saw the announcement for a Senate candidate. Not even in my home state. I mean, we got our senators. I like Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock. I adore him. I adore Senator John Ossoff. Obviously, I'll be supporting him in 2026. But I'm very, 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 very excited. And I feel like, you know, we're kind of like Lucy with the football, right? Or Charlie Brown with the football. Lucy keeps pulling it from us. Every time we think we're excited about a Texas candidate running for a statewide office, whether it's governor or U.S. Senate, I'm very excited about this one. And I know we've been excited before, whether it's Beto O'Rourke or Colin Allred in 2024, who, by the way, is running again in 2026 for John Cornyn's seat. But he has a primary challenger. And listen, I'm okay with Colin Allred. I got no problem with Colin. I think he's a fantastic candidate. But I am fixated. I'm fawning. I have been for quite a while now over one James Tallarico, who is not only a Texas state representative, he's also a Presbyterian seminarian, former public school teacher. He taught in middle school. This guy, he's like white Obama. I joke that he's like white Obama. And when you hear him speak, you'll probably think the same thing. He's like white Obama. Take a listen to this. He's announced he's running for Senate, and this is what James Tallarico is all about.
The biggest divide in our country is not left versus right. It's top versus bottom. Billionaires want us looking left and right at each other so that we're not looking up at them. The people at the top work so hard to keep us angry and divided because our unity is a threat to their wealth and their power. So their social media algorithms and their cable news networks tear us apart. They divide us by party, by race, by gender, by religion, so that we don't notice that they're defunding our schools, gutting our health care, and cutting taxes for themselves and their rich friends. It is the oldest strategy in the world: divide and conquer. But we will not be conquered. We're underdogs in this fight. We're going up against those billionaire mega donors and their puppet politicians. We're going up against a rigged system, and we're going up against a lot of money. But I'm a former middle school teacher. I don't scare easily. And Texans don't scare easily. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas. He taught me that we follow a barefoot rabbi who gave 2 commandments: love God and love neighbor. Because there is no love of God without love of neighbor. Every single person bears the image of the sacred. Every single person is holy. Not just my neighbors who look like me, or pray like me, or vote like me. Those billionaires are trying to keep us from seeing all that we have in common. They're trying to keep us from realizing that there is far more that unites us than divides us. Because once we do, we will come together across party, across race, across gender, across religion to take power back for ourselves and our communities. 2,000 years ago, when the powerful few rigged the system, that barefoot rabbi walked into the seat of power and flipped over the tables of injustice. To those who love this state, to those who love this country, to those who love our neighbors, it's time to start flipping tables.
Yes! Literally, I yelled that when I saw that for the first time. Yes! It's time to start flipping tables. I have said this many times. Those who know me know that this is rock solid, rock ribbed fact. I am not a religious person. I grew up in the Baptist church. I understand a lot of the morality that we were raised with, and I hear that through him. We haven't seen a lot of that from the, I use the air quotes, evangelical community in their societal lives, politically, judgmentally, et cetera, and so on. James Tallarico is, to me, the kind of candidate that Democrats can not only rally behind, but win with. I would love to see that man running for an office even higher than the Senate. Yeah, that one. I realize he's got to make his way up there first. Again, former middle school teacher, Presbyterian seminarian. He's like, 36 years old? He's a young man. Not that we don't need a young person in the White House. But listen, we need young people in Congress first, right? We have one millennial, one person under the age of 40 in Congress. And we just elected him 3 years ago. So Maxwell Frost. So I'm excited. James Tallarico is, to me, the kind of, and he's a lot of things. Again, I joke, I quip, right? He's black or he's white Obama. He does. He just, to me, he kind of gives off some Obama vibes. I'm also excited about the fact that he is someone who is a Presbyterian seminarian, but he's also a progressive. He's also pro-trans. He's pro-LGBTQI+, and unabashedly so. And he is able to speak eloquently about his religious convictions, and in doing so, still being pro-LGBTQI+, or, woke, if you will. I'm very excited about this. I'm also very excited because friend of the show, Kate Lincoln Goldfinch, who we've had on this show many times. She is an immigration attorney based in San Antonio. No, Austin. Austin. She's going to be running for James Tallarico's State House seat. How exciting is this, right? I mean, it's like a win-win. I'm excited about both of those candidates. I'm very excited about the announcement that James Tallarico is running for U.S. Senate. And I think he provides a stark contrast. And listen, when you're running against a Cornyn or, Rafael Ted Cruz, Cancun Cruz in Texas, you would think that this is a no-brainer. This is an easy decision for the voters, right? When you hear about Texas being all hat, no cattle, that is exactly because that is a ton of bullshit that Texans are willing to vote in time and time again. You look at their governor, who is all show, no boat. You look at, again, Ted Cruz, who talks a lot about values, and talks a lot about family, and talks a lot about hardworking Texans and being tough and all this stuff, and yet there he is in his flouncy little shorts heading off to Cancun in the midst of, a winter storm. What is it about every time Texas gets hit with some meteorological disaster, he's somewhere halfway around the world, unable to, actually put boots on the ground and be there to help people. It's an alarming trend. It's like if you see Ted Cruz in the international terminal at the airport, in whatever airport in Texas, just go ahead and tell your friends, hey, y'all, Ted Cruz is going out of the country. Check the weather forecast and see if there's something coming. No, I'm very excited about James Tallarico, and I cannot. These are the sorts of candidates that Democrats need to rally behind. And what we don't need to see is this hand-wringing of the establishment. Again, if it's just those two candidates, Colin Allred, James Tallarico, who are vying for the primary win in Texas, I don't believe that Democrats can go wrong. I really don't. I think they're both fantastic candidates. I am very excited about both of them. it's hard for it's like having two kids. How do you pick between the two? I love them both. I really do. I really do. But I'm very excited about James Tallarico because I think he, and listen, to an extent, I'd say the same about Colin Allred too. Who comes with the background of being in the military and former athlete and person of like he checks a lot of boxes. He just James Tallarico, Colin Allred and here they are in Texas in a state that's it's not even a purple state. It's still a red state. It's that state that we've been tantalizingly been told, oh, it's so soon to flip. It's so close. And yet we haven't been able to have the wherewithal to elect preferable candidates. Again, nothing against Beto O'Rourke. I thought the same of Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke was a fantastic candidate when he ran for office. And I hope that there's still a future for him, in elected office somewhere in the state of Texas or loftier ambitions if he's got them. Yeah, run for a congressional seat. The thing about the Texas redraw is you can only gerrymander so much. And there are a lot of Texas Republicans who are kind of pissed off that the gerrymander actually made their easily winnable districts now more competitive. So actually, Democrats may be in a better position in 2026. Anyway, I just wanted to share how excited I was about James Tallarico. It's The Ron Show, America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. All right, final segment of today's Ron Show, and it's a pretty long one, so let me just get right to it. I'm running against the clock here. Let's see, where are we reading from here? This would be from Market Watch. Victor Rakleitis reporting. A judge has ruled that Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook from Georgia should stay in her post for the time being, likely preserving her vote at the central bank's September 16-17 meeting that will set interest rates and delivering a setback to President Donald Trump's effort to fire her over an allegation of mortgage fraud. The public interest in Federal Reserve independence weighs in favor of Cook's reinstatement, U.S. District Court Judge Gia Cobb said from the District of Columbia said in her decision Tuesday night, adding that, quote, that independence is critical in promoting stability to the nation's banking system. In a statement, Abby David Lowell, Cook's attorney, said that the ruling, quote, recognizes and reaffirms the importance of safeguarding the independence of the Federal Reserve from illegal political interference. Ooh, that's a lot to say there. The ruling is only a narrow question of Cook's near-term status. Still, Cobb's decision is a step towards reducing the unusual level of uncertainty around who actually will take part in the Fed's upcoming meeting on rates. Listen, I'm a residential realtor here in Metro Atlanta. I can tell you one thing that I don't think a lot of folks have been talking about. There hasn't been a whole lot of conversation about housing and interest rates of late. There's been so much of this squabbling that if Donald Trump would just, stop bitching and moaning, he would have noticed interest rates, by the way, have been creeping down already. I mean, they're down almost a full point just in the last month and a half. They're hovering in the 6.2s now. If you're looking to buy a home, you can get a home loan now around 6.2. And there are some, perks and benefits. You could use some things, some delays, some point buy downs and get it below 6%. I mean, that's right, in the 5s. Here's the crazy thing, though. With all the other economic headwinds, with all the grousing about employment numbers, employment data, unemployment creeping, the jobs numbers creeping, the tariffs, the looming tariffs, Donald himself telling you, going to have to cut back on spending this holiday season because, you can't afford all of those toys coming from other countries thanks to his tariffs. That's not good for the housing market. I can tell you it's not good for the housing market. It's not good. We don't have buyers clamoring to race to buy now. And I know that that's sort of something that Trump has been waiting on to see interest rates drop, whether artificially or otherwise. And again, they've sort of just organically been climbing or been drawing down anyway without the Fed doing a thing. Now, the Fed's likely to give us, I would say, 0.25%. I don't think it'll go more than that just because of all the uncertainty. Again, one man made uncertainties in our economy. And I honestly don't even think that rate cut is going to do much for the economy on the whole. I don't think it's going to send people racing to borrow money to start businesses because unless, again, we talked the first half of the show with an African-American political consultant, Shavonda Miles. We were talking about African-American women, how disproportionately they've been affected by job cuts and student loan default, or forgiveness, I should say. And I mean, are we going to start suddenly doing things to help African-American women start jobs? I mean, there are a lot of those. There are a lot of those things that existed, but we've been rolling back DEI so much since January 20th of 2025 that those programs don't exist anymore at the corporate or at the governmental level. So I think we've shot ourselves in the foot here. Now, will that interest rate drop if we expect to see that in the middle of the month? And I'm telling a lot of my potential buyers, yeah, I think we're going to have that. But also notice, again, interest rates are already in the 6.2s, and there are incentives that a lot of mortgage lenders have put together to help you get that below 6% as well. Will the rate, gin up interest in home buying? This is typically a slow time of year for home sales anyway. I mean, it sort of draws down by October because people don't want to put their house on the market during Thanksgiving and Christmas and having people traipsing through their house with all the holiday decor up and all that stuff. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. What's another headline that I wanted to touch on today? We talked a little bit about the Hyundai ICE raid and the effects that it has on Georgia's and the American standing on the international community when it comes to investment in this country. I mean, again, another one of those scenarios where white nationalism seems to have shot itself in the foot. Brian Kemp, he doesn't strike me as being a white nationalist type, Republican. Donald Trump, however, is, and MAGA is seeped in it. But for all the things we can disagree with Brian Kemp on ideologically, I do believe that his honest interest is in making Georgia a leader in green energy and electric vehicle manufacturing and bringing jobs to this state, which you have to give him credit for, even if it meant it cost us, taxpayers money, or we have to bear the brunt of the cost because of, the curbs that he gives those businesses. But there is now this kind of a shock and dismay within the Korean community and in South Korea. Again, we Georgians and Americans, we looked really bad here. Lataro Greenspan, Adam Van Brimmer reporting in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution this morning. Koreans improbably became the face of immigration enforcement in the state earlier this month following an unprecedented raid on southeastern Georgia's Hyundai Meta Plant campus. Federal authorities said the bulk of the 475 workers arrested hailed from South Korea. Korean media reports put the number of impacted Korean nationals at more than 300. In the days since the raid, members of Georgia's Korean-American community have expressed shock and outrage, adding to higher-level diplomatic fallout between the U.S. and South Korea, two longtime allies. According to the 2020 U.S. Census, there were more than 71,000 people from Korea estimated to be living in Georgia that year, the fourth largest immigrant group behind Mexicans, Indians, and Jamaicans. Yoon-sin Park, president of the Korean American Association of Greater Atlanta, expressed deep concern over the Korean national's arrest at the Hyundai facility, saying this operation is particularly shocking because it targeted the construction site of a leading Korean global company, an unprecedented event. It is deeply regrettable that this crackdown has delayed construction and tarnished the image of a leading Korean company globally. Ruby Gold immigrated to Savannah in 1980 and has watched the local Korean community evolve, quote, almost overnight, since Hyundai and several of the automaker's South Korean-based suppliers launched operations less than 3 years ago. What was a small, close-knit society of fewer than 3,000 people, centered in a handful of churches, has grown rapidly and is constantly adjusting to the transient nature of families moving to and from Savannah area for temporary assignments. As the leader of the Korean American Association of Greater Savannah, founded in 1974, Gould has become a much in-demand liaison on many matters related to the Korean community. She said both longtime residents and newcomers share the same reaction to last week's raid: shock. She said it's ruined the whole image of Georgia being welcoming to Koreans. You hear that? Ruined the whole image of Georgia being welcoming to Koreans and the trust that's been built. Gould earned her U.S. citizenship 40 years ago, by the way. She went on to say Koreans have thrived here for decades, building small businesses and working in industry. Since then, since the raid, my phone rings constantly. People have doubts. That is the legacy of MAGA. That is the legacy of, it's ruined the legacy of what Brian Kemp has worked to do internationally. Another one that I wanted to share, Tia Mitchell reporting at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Marjorie Taylor Greene seems a little unhappy with things. She's really been kind of very sour on the GOP of late, right? Tia writing that Marjorie Taylor Greene said she doesn't really feel strongly about any of the leading candidates for Senate or governor here in the state of Georgia, and it was holding her support for now. Like, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you this, but I don't think Marjorie, God love her here of late, I don't think anybody's clamoring for Marjorie Taylor Greene's endorsement. Like, whoever's going to be the nominee for governor for U.S. Senate in the GOP, they're going to win her district. with or without her support. They are. Now, it's likely to be a close race, and every vote counts, right? And they'll go to her district to get those votes. But do they need her getting up on the stage and warming up the crowd? I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. My ex-husband's family, my ex-in-laws, they all live in that district. I've visited it quite often. Several friends over the years that I've made over there. I just don't think, and I know conservative, I just don't think Marjorie really rates. Like, they vote for her because she's that person. But I don't think, like, they're not going to invite her over, for a burger and beer. They're just not interested in her like that. She's kind of a celebrity, but not one of them. Yeah, I don't know. I think Marjorie is overplaying her hand a little bit. But she says, I'm not going to endorse anybody anytime soon. She was on the Politically Georgia podcast saying that. She says, no, I don't feel excited to do that right now. She considered running for one of those posts herself, but ultimately decided to seek a fourth term in the House next fall. She decided that when she wasn't getting all of the signs or any of the overtures from the Trump White House or the Georgia GOP that they were excited about her running for a Senate bid or for governor as well. She leaves that part out. Tia Mitchell writing, she's one of the highest profile GOP elected officials nationally and has built a huge platform amongst conservatives on social media. Just not so much in her district. She doesn't have much of a footprint. She doesn't have much of a grassroots following. She wins because she's a social media celebrity. And, of course, allows her to raise millions of dollars each campaign cycle, as Tia Mitchell points out. Green said the Georgia Republicans running for Senate and governor are not talking about what matters to voters most, like crime, improving the education system, addressing the environmental impact of data centers that power AI, and securing the border. Well, hang on a second. I mean, a lot of that sounded like red meat, like right-wing red meat. But the environmental impact of data centers that power AI, what is she, like a tree-hugging liberal? Oh, my God. That's interesting, encouraging. Improving the education system. Yeah, that's important stuff, too. That's, I got to think that the DOGE cuts and the evisceration of the Department of Education, which she, of course, is for, I don't think that really helps. And again, I would talk to any Republican about root causation. If you want to address crime, you got to deal with the root causation. I mean, that's the sticky part. It's the lack of opportunity. And I can tell you, in her district, there is a deep lack of opportunity. In fact, some of those green energy jobs that Brian Kemp was working hard to bring to this state, a lot of them were coming to her district. And now a lot of those companies are sidelining those jobs and expansions of plants. One of them in Cedartown, I spoke about that here a couple months ago. The folks that were going to be building solar panels, they're now pivoting towards, we're going to build high-rise glass. Okay. But they're not adding jobs. That's in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. Opportunity stunts crime. She also said that she's been turned off by candidates whose immigration messaging has focused on Laken Riley, the college student killed by an undocumented migrant and for whom a federal law enforcement bill was named. Huh. That's funny because she was the one who was screaming at Joe Biden to say her name. Huh. That's all interesting. Representative Mike Collins, who's running for Senate, was the primary sponsor of the bill and mentions it often on the campaign. I wonder if that's who she's talking about. Another candidate, Buddy Carter, recently released a campaign ad highlighting his support for the legislation. Green didn't name names, Tia Mitchell writes, but she said she feels like the focus on Riley's case has been gratuitous and re-traumatizing for the young woman's family. But not using her as campaign fodder in 2024. Of course, it's Katie bar to the door. Yeah, go for it. Like that's interesting timing, right? It was okay in 2024, but now that we've gotten past the election cycle, it's gross to use Laken Riley's name for political gain. Really? Here's what she said. I'm looking for serious candidates. I'm looking for candidates that have compassion for Laken Riley's mother and sister and not dragging her face in the killer on TV every day while still being able to maintain the issue of crime and secure borders. Wow. Lady, that's rich. Overall, Tia writes, Green said she is turned off and not interested in the campaigns right now. She declined to back Collins, Carter, or former football coach Derek Dooley in the Senate contest, and I don't think she will. Or Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, Attorney General Chris Carr, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in the gubernatorial race. I'll share that in the show notes at RonShowATL.com. Just found it interesting. That's going to do it for today's Ron Show. We air 9 a.m., 5 p.m. weekdays on America One Radio, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn or every podcast. Show notes, as always, at RonShowATL.com. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.